Committee, and on behalf of the committee, I welcome you all to today's Juneteenth employee program. Juneteenth is a federal holiday celebrating the triumph of the human spirit over slavery. It honors those former enslaved African Americans who survived the inhumane institution of chattel slavery, and honors African American freedom and achievement while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all cultures. And now, thanks to the efforts of Fort Worth's own Opal Lee, Juneteenth is now a federal holiday that celebrates the anniversary date of June 19th, 1865, when the announcement of General Order No. 3 was made by Union Army General Gordon Granger, proclaiming freedom for the enslaved people of Texas. For the last couple of months, I have had the great privilege of working with the employee work group who has planned today's program, which will feature a presentation, Juneteenth, past, present, and future, as well as an original theatrical production that I am sure you will all enjoy. Before we begin our program, though, we have a few remarks from our Chief Equity Officer and Director of the Diversity and Inclusion Department. Do please help me welcome Ms. Brooks to the microphone.
This feels like the Emmys, right? Thank you. So I just have a few comments today, and I wanted to share some thoughts. Maya Angelou published her seminal work, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, the year I was born. Now don't go Googling. Her autobiographical work was and is an open door to the authenticity of truth-telling as a form of storytelling. If you still watch the evening news or get your news from social media, you should know that truth-telling and storytelling, are not the same. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is a haunting look at journeyed experiences that are the key ingredients to an unforgettably beautiful life. A life, one life, among many, that can create a beautiful world if we are all just allowed to sing. Juneteenth is our song in the key of triumph, victory, struggle, and love of self, and love for people once caged and silenced and now free. As we celebrate today, remember the beauty of melody is the cacophony of keys, bobbing and weaving together to tell a story in a song. Each of us has a verse. Each of us knows the bridge. We will continue to lift our voices and sing. Sing it to America, in America, for America, because we know why the caged bird sings. We too sing America. Thank you. And now I would like to present our Assistant City Manager, Ms. Jess McCackern.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here with you today. It is a privilege to join you as we celebrate the Juneteenth holiday in the city of Fort Worth. And it's an incredibly special holiday observation since the woman who led the years and years long charge to have that pivotal date in history recognized as the 11th federal holiday resides right here in Fort Worth. As he mentioned, Miss Opal Lee. For those of you that are available, I think Miss Opal Lee is actually leading story time at one of the libraries. Is it today or tomorrow? Perfect. Oh, that's next week. Thank you for the correction. So if you've got time, go attend that. I guarantee it will be a fantastic event. You know, I think we can all be truthful and recognize that it's a really interesting time in the nation right now when there are many criticisms of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts within communities, within schools, workplaces, and even governments. But here in Fort Worth, our city leadership remains steadfast in support of the mission and efforts of diversity and inclusion, both in our workforce and in our community. As you already know, we have an entire department that exists to promote the values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access as they apply to our employees and our labor relations, as they apply to the provision of municipal services and capital investments, and as those apply to the quality of life for all residents in Fort Worth. In our workforce, the city has made great strides over the last 10 years to increase the racial diversity amongst our employee makeup, as well as our management team makeup. And we are moving closer and closer to matching the diverse makeup of the population of Fort Worth. This past April, our Human Resources Director presented to the City Council that our racial makeup of all employees as it exists today is now 28% Hispanic, 17% African American, 48% white, and 7% other, which tracks closer to our population makeup of 35% Hispanic, 19% African American, 38% white, and 8% other. While our gender makeup has really not changed largely in the last 10 years, it's still about 70% male and 30% female, we have seen a notable increase in females holding the roles of managers, department directors, and assistant directors, and we're very proud of that transition. And in support of the continued desire to promote diversity in our workforce that matches our community, the city is continuously implementing innovative recruitment efforts, and we always welcome ideas and thoughts from our employees. So if you've got something to share, let us know. Additionally, we offer robust opportunities for learning and professional growth. And if you have ever heard me speak at any function, you have heard me plug the many training opportunities that we offer through both Fort Worth Employee University and through the library. Most of the training offerings through Fort Worth EU are free for employees. And we find that employees who attend 3 or more trainings promote more quickly and more frequently than employees who do not take advantage of those free training opportunities. I'm also excited that Fort Worth EU is looking at more ways to expand the access to those training opportunities, specifically for our employees that cannot attend in person in the middle of the day. So stay tuned for more information about those offerings. The city also recently graduated our first cohort of employee students from the Master of Public Administration degree through the University of Texas at Arlington, and it was a very diverse group across all departments of the city. We are also about to launch our second cohort, and those employee students will start this fall, so we are very excited for what they're going to do. For employees that desire to pursue other degrees outside of the UTA MPA program, the city offers a fantastic tuition reimbursement program. And lastly, to plug the library, even if you are not a Fort Worth resident, all employees may have access to a free library card, which then entitles employees to more than 1,000 free training classes through LinkedIn. And I can tell you I've taken many of them, and they are great. I am so proud to work for an organization that supports and encourages our employees to always keep pursuing their learning opportunities and their professional growth. And I encourage you and your peers to take advantage of every opportunity that is available to you. Never stop learning and growing. And lastly, before this program begins, I would like to recognize the employees that are part of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So if you are on that committee, please stand so we can recognize you. When I was here to give the welcoming remarks in February, I recognize that these employees are volunteering for this assignment on top of their day-to-day work. And so we are extremely appreciative of all that they do. I know back in February, there were a couple vacancies that they were trying to fill. Did y'all already do those? Have you filled them? We'll see, but if you are interested in serving on this important committee, I really encourage you to do it. The work is extremely valuable to the organization, and it is important. And last but not least, thank you to the Working Group Committee that worked to plan and deliver this program today. Once again, we are so appreciative of all that y'all are doing. And thank you for having me this afternoon.
Thank you, Jessica, for those remarks. Now, I want to welcome Dr. Angela Mack to the lectern. In 2023, Dr. Mack became the third Black woman to graduate from the Department of English at TCU with a PhD, and the first Black woman to earn a PhD in her specific discipline in TCU's 150-year history, and is currently a visiting lecturer at that very institution from which she graduated. And just a few months ago was named the recipient of the 2024 James Berlin Outstanding Dissertation Award for her dissertation, Black Storytelling in Southside Funky Town, Texas, from the 76104 zip code to the life and legacy work of a Tatiana Carr Jefferson as a mattering of Black life. Her dissertation is rooted in correcting negative narratives about her community, and while recalibrating a Tatiana's public memory from victimhood to the dignity of personhood. And with credentials like that, we are so fortunate to have Dr. Mack with us today to share her perspectives on Juneteenth, past, present, and future. Dr. Mack?
Wow, I didn't know I was gonna get an introduction like that. Wow. Like, I feel like I am getting an award, and I want to thank my mama. I want to thank, thank you. I'm usually not one to have that type of bio read. I try to keep mine pretty simple, but I really do appreciate being here. Give me 1 second. I'm setting my timer because I want to make sure I respect the time in which we have. All right, and the clicker, y'all. Don't worry. Okay, I'm good. All right. So as y'all been able to hear, I am Dr. Angela Mack. I'm glad to be joining with you once again. I was here for the Black History Month program, and evidently I must have done something right. So they invited me back, so I'm glad to be here. I just want you to know that it is an honor, it is a privilege to be able to stand before you today. Thank you. I recognize that it is no small thing to actually be in your presence, okay? So, what I normally would like to do for us today, we are going to be talking about what? Juneteenth. Now, Fort Worth is a national hotspot for the actual holiday. And also, do note, we're a hotspot for barbecue too. So, so we have surpassed Lockhart, Texas as the official barbecue capital of the state. So, all right. So as we are getting ready to start today, I always like to just have the custom of just coming together in this shared space, kind of grounding us in the moment that we are going to be sharing today. I want to do something in terms of a remembrance and also as a matter of dedication. I first give honor to the sacred people of the Wichita and affiliated tribes. It's because of them, their ancestral lands, Fort Worth is built upon. Their love and the ancient care for these grounds is what makes Fort Worth thrives. I honor the 150 unnamed enslaved ancestors whose labor cultivated the very origins of Fort Worth from its Army outpost beginnings. It is through this Juneteenth presentation that I recognize their life and labor as they dreamed of the freedom that we are experiencing today. I honor the ancestors of Galveston who made Juneteenth a reality for African Americans in Texas because they shared and celebrated the news of freedom and jubilee throughout the state. They enshrined it as a holiday and commemoration long before the rest of the nation knew about it or even recognized it. Finally, as everything that I do in 2024, I dedicate this presentation to my father, the late, great David Hemphill Sr. He passed away this past December after a long and courageous battle with cancer. It is because of him that I stand in his strength and love. It is because of him that I stand as a testimony in faith, and it is because of him that I continue to stand. With that, let's begin. All right, here's just a little bit about me. So I was born and raised in the Morningside area of the historic South Side. So I am a South Side funky town homegirl through and through. When you come to know me, that's how I introduce myself. I introduce myself that way more than anything else. My education is primarily Fort Worth because I'm born and raised here. Pascal, Texas Wesleyan. I actually took classes at Tarrant County back when it was TCJC. Dated myself, all right. And as you heard, I earned my PhD at TCU. I did do my graduate school at Texas Women's University, so I want to shout them out too because they are a fantastic institution. I've been celebrating Juneteenth since my childhood, and my family has been celebrating it for generations. So as the national news of Juneteenth becoming popular, this is something that I get to celebrate much more out in the open. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I love me some college and pro football, y'all. And I do consider myself a super nerd girl because I love geeking out over Marvel Cinematic Universe, Comic Cons, some other stuff. So that's a whole nother presentation another day, okay? My background, in terms of my professional background, I teach rhetoric and writing studies, and I'm currently teaching classes in the ethnic studies department at TCU. I'm not a historian, but I rely heavy on history when it comes to local, state, and national oral histories because I do storytelling work in my research and in my scholarship. Today, our journey is going to be the following. The history of Juneteenth, we're going to look at how the language of Juneteenth in terms of how freedom is defined. We're also going to look at the evolution of Juneteenth over the generations. In this part, this is what we're going to be taking a look at. We're going to first take a look at the past generation, like what did freedom look like before General Order Number 3? Then we're going to look at the Jubilee generation, the first Juneteenth. Then we're going to look at what I call it my mom's generation. I call that the previous generation. Not to make her old, it's just prior to me, okay? And then we're going to look at the present generation. How do we think about and how we're celebrating Juneteenth? Part of our gathering today is part of that celebration. And then we're going to look at the future generation. What can we look forward to in the future when it comes to dreaming about Juneteenth? So, one of the things that I want to do before we get started, there is a custom that I normally have, and it is what I consider audience participation. I've been thinking about what is a good word that can work for us so that you and I can make sure that we're doing a call and response in the tradition of our African American ancestors. So what I've been thinking about is the word Jubilee. You will see it referenced throughout my presentation, and often when we're thinking about Juneteenth, you also are seeing the reference of the word Jubilee itself. It is defined as a special anniversary or an event that celebrates the marker of time, is usually within 25 or 50-year increments. Also, Jubilee is a celebration of the canceling of debt. Debt cancellation. Amen, people. All right. So for those who are familiar with the word Jubilee from the Old Testament tradition, I thought this would be fitting in terms of our word today. So let's practice. When I say Jubilee, I want you to say Jubilee back to me, okay? 1, 2, 3. Jubilee.
Jubilee!
Ooh, I don't have to do that again. Okay, we good. All right. Hey. All right. Okay. So first, we're going to start with the history of Juneteenth. In order to understand this history, it must be understood within the context of Emancipation Proclamation, the Civil War, and of course, the era of enslavement of African Americans in the United States. The Emancipation Proclamation was officially recorded as Proclamation Number 95, and that was issued on New Year's Day, January 1st, 1863. It was an executive order from President Abraham Lincoln, and it freed enslaved people from the Confederate states that seceded from the Union. This was smack dab in the middle of the Civil War, a war that was fought among its own people to determine which states get to maintain the advantage of economic prosperity built upon either industrial or slave labor, aka state rights. Now, please make no mistake, the Civil War was about slavery. It was about maintaining a racial code of oppression to keep a wealth of cotton and other crops flowing and multiplying an actual labor market through the ongoing reproduction of an enslaved labor force. So, the Emancipation Proclamation is the actual presidential executive order from 1863. General Order Number 3 was issued in 1865 to ensure Texas got the memo that Emancipation Proclamation actually was issued, okay? Texas was the last state in the Confederacy that ended slavery, but it was not the last state to end slavery. Mississippi was. The Battle of Appomattox Courthouse and the Battle of Palmetto Ridge are the last actual recorded battles of the Civil War. On Monday, June 19, 1865, nearly 2,000 Union troops arrived at Galveston Bay, Texas. General Gordon Granger and the Army decreed the announcement that enslaved African Americans, which numbered about 250,000 people in the state, were indeed free. Keep in mind, again, that the 13th Amendment is what freed all enslaved people, regardless of location. Now, there were several rumors that surfaced over the years as to why Texas was late to the party, okay? One legend states that messengers were killed along the way as they were trying to deliver the news. Another legend says that plantation owners wanted one more harvest before letting the news be known. However, most likely the truth of this is that enslaved Texans already knew about the Emancipation Proclamation, but the terror tactics of plantation owners and the limited military presence is what created a situation of suspended animation. And it wasn't until the Union troops were able to come with weapons that brought about that enforcement. So when General Order Number 3 was actually being read, it was in a military enforcement, not just someone who was just reading the proclamation. And that, because of the presence of the military, helped with the freeing of the enslaved. Now also, a final, just like a quick note on the flag. I know many of us are probably familiar with the black, the red, and the green flag. That's kind of like the United States. That's the unofficial one. That's the one I call the FUBU flag, the For Us, By Us flag, okay? But this one that I have on my t-shirt and that you will see referenced in the presentation, this is actually the one that usually flies above during Juneteenth. This is the official flag. This was the brainchild of Ben Haith. He was a founder of the National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation. He created this flag in 1997 with the help of collaborators and a Boston-based illustrator, Lisa Jean Graff, and that person actually helped to bring this vision to life. The white star actually represents Texas because that's where the general order was decreed. The starburst around the star represents a new beginning for African Americans in Galveston and throughout the land. The curve that extends across the width of the flag represents a new horizon and the opportunities that lay ahead for African Americans. The red, the black, and the blue represents the American flag because this is a reminder that the slaves and their descendants were and are Americans. This flag was revised in 2000 into the version that we see now, because now when you see the flag, you actually see the date printed on the flag. And that was just to make sure that we knew when the flag actually was inspired by in terms of its growth. Y'all with me? Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Ooh, okay. Y'all make me feel special. Thank y'all. So what I want us to just think about as we're just thinking about Juneteenth, as we're celebrating, getting ready for the cookouts and all of the festivities, I want us to think about the language of Juneteenth. I want us to specifically think about the language of freedom. Often we use these terms and we use them kind of interchangeably, sometimes as synonyms. I want to make sure that we understand that the ways in which we use this language actually has specific meanings depending on how you're using it. For instance, freedom is the absence of subjection to foreign domination or a despotic or a tyrannical government. Liberation is the act or process of freeing someone or something from another's control. Emancipation is the fact or process of being set free from legal, social, and political restrictions. Abolition is the act of officially ending or stopping something. Independence, the state of being free of control of some other person, country, or entity. So when I think about these words, when I want us to think about the language of freedom, I want us to think about all of this brings together the ways that we can live, breathe, and be fullness in our humanity. Now, we're about to get ready to get into the generations, okay? So, Jubilee. Yes, all right. Yes, so to begin, I want us to think about that before emancipation, before the 13th Amendment, before the ending of slavery, there was always those who fought for and made concerted efforts towards freedom. Our primary focus, of course, is here in the United States. Slavery abounded in South America, in the Caribbean, and even in Central America. And the numbers of the enslaved I'm talking about they far surpass the numbers of the enslaved here in the United States, even up until 1865. But I want us to know this, in every location, every continent, every country, every state, every municipality, or even places in the wilderness, Black people were always fighting for freedom, always. Too often the story is told that it was just groups of solely white abolitionists who helped the enslaved escape to freedom, whether part of the Underground Railroad or not. And to be clear, the Underground Railroad was not a national network of people, escape routes. Sometimes it was just groups of people who decided to help other people out, and not every route or person or group knew about each other. So oftentimes we think of the Underground Railroad as something very collective. It actually was much more scattered and not as networked as we have been taught. But also, I do want us to know that even though it is very much so true, white abolitionists, they were part of the cause, they weren't the only ones. Several Native tribes across the country not only gave refuge to the enslaved, but they fought alongside them in the revolts. The Cherokee, Shawnee, Seminole, and Ojibwa were just some of the few Native tribes that helped freedom seekers along the way. And it is important to note that Black people who were seeking freedom, the ancestors didn't always go north. Many of the ancestors actually went south in the Caribbean and Europe. And not only that, Mexican nationals and Texas Americans residents also helped in the security and the resistance of freedom seekers, so much so that there are concentrated populations of mixed heritage individuals that can trace their roots to the formerly enslaved along with Mexican and indigenous identities. So here's the fun fact. One of the oldest celebrations of Juneteenth, south of Texas border, can be found in the village of Nacimiento de los Negros, meaning the birthplace of Black people, in the Coahuila state at the foothills of the Sierra Madre. This village can trace back all the way to the 1820s in terms of its African and indigenous roots, where the Muskogos, which are the descendants of Afro-Seminoles, found refuge and eventually merged with the Mexican people to form an Afro-Mexican society. Not only do they still reside there, they still celebrate Juneteenth the way that they first celebrated it back in the 1860s. So please know, freedom has always been multiracial, always been coalitional, and Black people have always led the efforts to escape from bondage. Now that we know what freedom looks like before Juneteenth, let's take a look at how freedom looks like first Juneteenth. Jubilee. All right. Although on the very day that the announcement came itself, celebrations completely broke out. The first recorded celebration of Juneteenth actually took place on Tuesday, June 19th, 1866. The first celebration of Juneteenth, in the ways that we come to know the holiday today, took place in Austin in 1867. It was over 100 years before it was recognized as a state holiday, which I didn't know this. It's been recognized as a state holiday since June 7, 1979. What's cool is there is actual photographic evidence of some of the earliest celebrations, and that can date back all the way to 1880. Newspapers, telegrams, and word of mouth helped spread the news that Black people could rejoice, and not just privately, but Black people could do it out in the open and with excitement. On the slide, you'll see those are some of the actual photographs from 1900, and you actually see an actual newspaper clipping of one of the earliest Juneteenth celebrations as well. And this one was actually in Austin, Texas. The first celebrations also took place in Galveston and Houston, and then eventually were spread across the state. Juneteenth is the first cookout, okay? It is, it's truly the first cookout. This is where we had land, parks, neighborhoods were rented out or occupied for barbecues, parades, games, sports, music, and even Civil War reenactments from former Black Union soldiers. Black folks stepped out in style, came in their finest dress, and it was a gathering of recognizing that after so many years of oppression and trauma, African Americans could stand fully in humanity. Barbecue and pit masters, both men and women, because women are good pit masters too, became an established tradition among African Americans during this time because those type of outdoor gatherings that I mentioned, those were first custom by Southern white elites during slavery when plantation owners required their enslaved to cook for them and wait upon multitudes of people in outdoor gathering spaces like gardens, fields, and cleared brushlands, and those type of brushlands eventually became parks. Juneteenth was a summer outdoor festival and celebration, and it was a reunion, similar to how the culture gets down today. It peered 4th of July celebrations then and even now. It was joyous, it was fun, it was fly, it was a flex, it was musical, and it was unifying. Y'all know what I mean by flex. Come on now. Now here in Fort Worth, celebrating Juneteenth was no exception. Black Fort Worthians have been gathering together just like other celebrations across the state, and they made Juneteenth a public affair. One of the first newspaper references of Juneteenth in Fort Worth as an organized celebration is mentioned in the Fort Worth Democrat in 1881. Though some of the first initial references of Juneteenth here goes all the way back to 1878. So this means that since the Reconstruction era, Black people have not only been in Fort Worth, but now they were living as free residents in the city and celebrate what they knew about the Galveston Decree. For example, Fort Worth once had what's called Douglas Park and McGarr Parks, and they were specifically established for African American outdoor spaces. These are two of the parks that served as recreational grounds for Black Fort Worthians to gather, play, have fun, and to enjoy outdoor activities. These parks also hosted the early Juneteenth gatherings long before public parks of Fort Worth were allowing Black residents to visit. Douglas Park was established in 1895, and it was actually named after Frederick Douglass. And this was purchased by Thomas Mason, J.D. Johnson, and A. Samlin. They were Black businessmen that named the park, of course, after Frederick Douglass, but they dropped one of the S's. Douglas Park eventually led to McGarr Park in 1909, named after Hiram McGarr, because it began to overflow with people who were coming to see the Negro League baseball team, which we had a Negro League baseball team, y'all, okay? The first name was the McGarr Wonders, and later it became known as the Black Panthers. So we Black Panther before Black Panther, y'all, okay? Okay. Both of these parks were the locations of some of the first documented Juneteenth celebrations in the early 1900s. Even though these and even often referenced Dixie Park no longer exist, these histories can be felt because it's their locations in celebrating Juneteenth that made safe spaces for Black people to celebrate. Jubilee! Jubilee! Now this generation that we're getting to is what I call my mama's generation, from the 1950s and the 1960s. Juneteenth has been celebrated even when our nation was struggling in terms to live up to ideas of freedom and equality. My mama is from the generation that history is actually being fought against right now in terms of banning books and in terms of restrictions. My mom lived through desegregation in the civil rights era. She remembers marches with Martin, the legacies of Malcolm and Medgar. She remembers when JFK and RFK were assassinated. She lived through the sit-ins and the bus boycotts and even those that were staged here. She remembers the color-only water fountains and going to all Black schools and sitting in the back of the bus. This means that my mom knows Juneteenth as a celebration of commemoration and survival. When parks like Douglas and McGarr Parks no longer were in popular use or bought out for development or suffered abandonment, segregated parks became the new sites of how Jim Crow played out in our city. And this is a picture of my mama, y'all. And she knows she cute, so she don't know that she's in the slide today, but she about to find out. So what I have on the slide here is Forest Park. This is Forest Park before it was desegregated. So this was during the time of Jim Crow in our city. We also have this newspaper clipping in 1951 that talks about the fact that during Juneteenth, this is when Black people were able to go to Forest Park, to the zoo, and to the golf course. The one day of the year in Fort Worth that you could do that, because you couldn't do it any other day of the year. Jubilee. Jubilee. All right, now we're moving into the 1970s. And for a period of time, because of racial segregation, because of the civil rights movement, and specifically because of the Vietnam War, there was a die down in terms of how people celebrated Juneteenth. But it was a revitalization in the 1970s because of the Black arts movement and the Black Power movement. So it went from kind of like small personal gatherings, we ended up starting having larger public gatherings again. So there was a dip and dive between the 1950s and 60s, but it came back up in the 1970s. So from Sycamore Park, Stop 6, from Como, from north, south, east, and west, Jubilee and Juneteenth started being celebrated across the city once again. Jubilee. Today. Juneteenth is not just a Texas holiday anymore, y'all. It is nationally recognized. Come on. Yes. It is nationally recognized. And we have very much so to thank Dr. Opal Lee for that. What I wanted to say is being able to celebrate Juneteenth today means I get to be proud as an African American in the fullness of who I am, with my mama now, with my cousin now. We all can get together for the cookout and we can invite everyone. Everyone can be a part of Juneteenth. What I have here, these are just some of the celebrations that we're having in Fort Worth. These are not all. We're talking about pageants, we're talking about parades, we're talking about the fact that we have documentaries that are based here in Fort Worth, we have films that are based here in Fort Worth, we have all of the arts, we have all the gospel concerts. You name it, Fort Worth has put Juneteenth and who we are on the map. So I wanted us to be able to see that when we're celebrating Juneteenth, we celebrate it fully. That's how we're doing it today. I'm not worth my salt. You know I'm going to be up here and not say Dr. Lee. Come on now. Y'all not going to run me out of here. But I want us to just make sure that we know Dr. Lee's story. The reason why that Juneteenth matters is not just something that she chose. It's something that's very personal. On Juneteenth, 1939, a young Opal Flake and her family were confronted by a white mob of about 500 rioters, and they burned her family home down only weeks after they had moved in. It's this childhood incident that inspired our educator, the activist, the proud sorority member of Zeta Phi Beta Incorporated, and the woman who would become known nationwide as the grandmother of Juneteenth. She is our very own Dr. Opal. Her activism, her ageless strength and persistence not only has impacted our city, but her advocacy for Juneteenth has led for it to be recognized. Now you can have celebrations on CNN, y'all. Now you can have celebrations in Idaho, which that is a real thing. To be able to see Hawaii get in on the game, Juneteenth means celebration and freedom for all. And we can thank Dr. Opal Lee for her tireless activism. And in 97, if she can do it, we don't have an excuse to put our hands to the plow and to continue to fight for equality. Jubilee! Jubilee! All right. This is what the future's getting ready to look like, y'all. In 2026, Fort Worth is projected to have our very own National Juneteenth Museum. Yes, let's give it a hand, yes. Because of the vision of Dr. Opal Lee, because of the tireless efforts of the visionary and CEO Jared Howard, the National Juneteenth Museum will be a permanent fixture in the historic South Side, where we can think about our history, our celebrations, and our culture. It's not only commemorate the traditions of Juneteenth and what we've known yesterday and today, but it's also going to commemorate what we know about Juneteenth in the future. So our city and our residents, our communities will be able to point to this Smithsonian level, state-of-the-art museum that joins along with all of the quality museums here in Fort Worth, and we get to say that we put Juneteenth on the map. We honor Galveston, but we expand on Galveston's dream here in Fort Worth. And so the picture that you see here, that is the markup of the future Juneteenth Museum, the National Juneteenth Museum. Juneteenth is definitely Texas born. It is rooted in the history of African American people here, in our state, in our country, but it doesn't stop here. Juneteenth celebrates and symbolizes the total ending of slavery here in the United States, but it celebrates equality. Juneteenth is a reminder that we must never forget our past. We must continue to teach and advocate and correct and include the education of our history. And we must endeavor to make a better future for generations that are here and for the ones that are to come. From Galveston to the White House and even Mexico, Juneteenth is a freedom celebration for we the people, meaning Juneteenth is for all people. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Mack, for sharing your research and insight. Wasn't she wonderful? Give her another round of applause. Now it is time to welcome Nikki Washington to introduce the next portion of our program. Nikki is the production manager for DVA Productions, which is led by Sharon Goodspeed Keaton, who wrote, directed, and produced an original performance piece that we are about to see here today. Miss Keaton couldn't be with us here today, but I wanted to take a moment to just share a little bit about her with y'all. She is an actor, singer, writer, director, and producer who has been performing professionally here for more than 30 years. The Fort Worth native has toured nationally and internationally, and in 2008 formed her own nonprofit theater company, DVA Productions, which focuses on addressing issues of interracial struggle and acceptance, intergenerational relationships, growth and progress in African American communities, and in strengthening the communication between adults and youth and the acceptance of people's differences, while celebrating the joys and triumphs of the members of the communities, and telling those stories through song and dance.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I am Nikki Washington, also known as Tyrenika Marie, and we are so excited to be here with you all to celebrate this National Juneteenth holiday. On behalf of DVA Productions, we are proud to present Let Freedom Ring, A Generational Perspective. Written, directed, and produced by Sharon Goodspeed Keaton. Today we are joined by these wonderful actors, Stephonia Roberts, Chandra Gabriel, Indra Camry, and Beret. This story is also told through dance of Cosmopolitan Dance Theater under the direction of Christina Brown. We have the lovely Abigail Berry and Little Miss Justice Bridges. We are under the stage direction of Sheridan Monroe. We are so excited and so elated to be here. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy Let Freedom Ring, A Generational Perspective. Thank you.
Freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And
Martha is the name given to me at birth. Strong, stout, resilient. They are simply a few of the words. Imagine being a child, and this is how you are referred. The entirety of your existence is dedicated to living upon their description. It's mostly a description of fiction, but you must establish your position. But in a society that gives you no permissions, which is largely an affliction, creating internal and external friction, stripping away your own ambition. So you live with this depiction until you find your freedom. But what does freedom mean to me? Now, growing up in the 40s, I loved to go to church, but freedom of religion was not always hard at work. But from accessibility to availability, I was always seeking God. Now, I'm the daughter of a former slave whose path was not easily trod, leaning on a pillar. Created to protect my rights, being let down repeatedly because my skin reflected no light. Freedom to me is church. Freedom to me is religion. Freedom to me is God. Freedom to me is spirituality. Freedom is my hallelujah, however, whenever, and wherever. Let freedom ring. Of thee I sing. Grant me the means to be a queen in the land of the free. The spirit of my ancestors gleam.
Felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulder. Pressure to break or retreat at every turn. Facing the fear that the truth I discovered. No telling how all this will work out, but I can't afford to go back now. I am looking for freedom, looking for freedom, oh, 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 and to find it gives me everything I have. Well, I am looking for freedom, looking for freedom, oh, 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 and to find it may take everything I have.
I know all too well it don't come easy. The chains of the world, they seem to move in tight. I try to walk around if I'm stumbling so familiar. Try to get up, but the doubt is so strong. There's gotta be a wind in my bones. I'm looking for freedom. Looking for freedom.
Liz is my name, short for Elizabeth. Loud, proud, combative are a few things that they said. Cases against you filed. Like you're always on trial because you rank naturally higher. They can't extinguish a fire. They try to force a rewire. Then all the forces conspire, draining your innate desires, increasing what they require, tirelessly working to deny her until you find your freedom. But what does freedom mean to me? Growing up in the 80s, I loved to just talk. But freedom of speech,
Freedom of speech.
a phrase at which most of the country would balk. From academia to social causes, I always stood to speak. The movement of civil rights had occurred and left me here to seek, and leaning on a pillar created to protect my rights, silenced at every turn because my skin reflects no light. Freedom to me is speaking. Freedom to me is storytelling. Freedom to me is poetry and prose. Freedom to me is being expressive. Freedom to me is speaking without skewed societal boundaries, however, whenever, wherever.
Let freedom ring. Of thee I sing. Grant me the means to be a queen in the land of the free. The spirit of my ancestors gleam.
I'ma keep on running cause the winner don't quit on themselves. I'ma wade through the waters till the tide don't move. I'ma ride through your borders. Call me bulletproof. Lord, forgive me, I've been running blind in truth. I'ma wade through your shallow love till the deep I knew. I'm telling these tears go and fall away, fall away. Oh, may the last one burn into flames. Freedom, freedom, I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose. Yeah, freedom, freedom, where are you? 'Cause I need freedom too. I break chains all by myself. Won't let my freedom rot in hell. Hey, I'ma keep on running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
Yo, my name is Brooklyn, named after the city. Fiery, outspoken, fluid are the monikers they attach to me. Imagine being a child and being told who you have to be.
Freedom, freedom.
Called a digital native, criticized for being creative, diminish your level of greatness, refer to your lifestyle as phases, place you in a box they created, applying labels defining what straight is, not realize that the definition of what hate is. Being the generation most underrated, continuously being underestimated until you find your freedom. But what does freedom mean to me? Growing up in the 21st century, the answer isn't simply no. The freedom of petition was created, but I might have a say-so. Therefore, sitting idly by isn't really my forte. I'd rather take it all the way to the Capitol and make sure I have my say. Leaning on a pillar created to protect my rights, disregarded throughout the land because my skin reflects no light. Freedom to me is fighting. Freedom to me is protesting. Freedom to me is challenging. Freedom to me is questioning laws. Freedom to me is disputing any policy that does not serve everyone well. However, whenever, wherever.
Let freedom ring. Of thee I sing. Grant me the means to be a queen in the land of the free. In the spirit of my ancestors gleam. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
Freedom to me is
I break chains all by
Thank you all for such an inspiring and informative presentation. Give them another round of applause. Let them hear you in the back. I know for many of us, the origins of Juneteenth are not unfamiliar to us, given the tireless work of Dr. Opal Lee to make it a national holiday. But I'll bet we all learned something we didn't know before from this presentation. I know I did. And that brings us to the end of our program. But before we sign off, I want to thank all the employees who worked so hard to make this program happen. All of you for being able to join us here in person and online. And on behalf of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I want to thank city leadership for their support of not only this program, but for all of our efforts to foster a greater understanding and appreciation for diversity within this workforce here at the city. I also want to mention a few other Juneteenth activities occurring within the community here this coming week. I want to mention that Opal Lee's Walk for Freedom is taking place this year in Dallas on Wednesday, June 19th. And there are several other activities here in Fort Worth that very same day. The Tarrant County Black Historical and Genealogical Society is hosting a program from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Lenora Rolla Heritage Center Museum that includes tours, art making, slave narrative readings, and games such as sack races, bean tosses, and dominoes, and music and food to accompany. So be sure to pick up a flyer with details as you all leave, and you can visit Fort Worth's website to learn about other Juneteenth events and activities. Thank you all for coming today. Now for our in-person guests, Dr. Matt